The room smelled of disinfectant and old concrete, the kind of place where voices echoed longer than they should. She stood in the center, boots aligned perfectly on the faded floor markings, shoulders back, eyes forward. Around her, a half-circle of younger operators and base personnel watched in uneasy silence. No one laughed out loud, but the cruelty was in the air anyway. The order had come fast and sharp, wrapped in authority but fueled by arrogance. Someone had decided she needed to be taught a lesson, that the quiet woman who never explained herself deserved public humiliation. The clippers buzzed to life behind her head, loud enough to drown out the shallow breaths of the room. The first pass tore through her hair, dark strands falling to the floor like evidence of a mistake no one wanted to claim. A few people shifted their weight, uncomfortable now that the joke had become real. She didn't flinch. Her jaw stayed locked, eyes fixed on the far wall where an old unit emblem was peeling away. Every instinct she had screamed to stop this, not out of fear, but out of discipline. She had survived worse rooms than this, worse men, worse decisions made by people who thought rank was louder than truth. The humiliation was intentional, meant to reduce her to something small, something controllable. Whispers crept through the crowd, half-formed opinions and quick judgments. Some assumed she was a transfer who messed up. Others thought she'd spoken out of turn. No one asked. The clippers moved again, closer to her scalp, the vibration crawling down her neck. The officer overseeing it all watched with folded arms, convinced he was restoring order. He didn't notice the subtle change in the room when a senior enlisted man near the door stiffened, his eyes narrowing as recognition flickered and died behind regulation calm. Hair continued to fall. The mirror across the room reflected a woman being stripped of something personal, but her posture never broke. Inside, she counted seconds, breaths, memories of colder nights and heavier losses. This wasn't punishment. This was impatience dressed up as command. When the clippers finally clicked off, the silence was worse than the noise had been. She was handed a towel and told to step back into line. She complied, wiping her scalp once, then folding the towel with deliberate care. No one noticed the footsteps approaching from the corridor at first. They were measured, confident, carrying a weight that didn't need announcement. The door opened, and the temperature of the room seemed to drop. She kept her eyes forward, newly shaven head held high, as the presence behind her stopped everything without saying a word. The footsteps halted just inside the doorway, and the room froze in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with instinct. Conversations died in throats. Even the officer who had ordered the humiliation straightened, sensing a shift he didn't yet understand. The woman with the freshly shaved head remained still, her breathing slow and controlled, as if this were just another inspection. The towel was tucked under her arm now, her hands relaxed at her sides, but there was something unshakable about her stance that suddenly felt out of place for someone who had just been publicly disciplined. A voice finally broke the silence, calm and low, carrying the kind of authority that didn't need volume. It asked a single question, not loud enough to be confrontational, but precise enough to demand an answer. Who authorized this? The officer stepped forward quickly, shoulders squared, delivering his explanation with confidence. He spoke about discipline, about maintaining standards, about how exceptions erode command. Each word sounded correct on the surface, but the room felt tighter with every sentence. No one interrupted him. No one needed to. The senior enlisted man near the door shifted, coming to attention without being told. That movement spread like a signal. One by one, others followed, suddenly aware that this wasn't an internal correction anymore. This was something else. The voice from the doorway responded, asking the officer if he had reviewed the personnel file before acting. The officer hesitated for the first time, a pause so brief it might have gone unnoticed anywhere else. Here, it echoed. He said the file wasn't necessary. Behavior was behavior, rank was rank. The woman in the center of the room felt the air change against her scalp, a strange coolness that had nothing to do with temperature. She recognized the voice now. She had heard it in briefing rooms where maps decided lives, in operations where silence meant survival. She still didn't turn. She didn't need to. The voice addressed her directly, using her full name, rank included. A ripple of confusion cut through the crowd. Heads tilted, eyes widened. Someone swallowed hard. The officer's face drained of color as the realization hit him a second too late. The name wasn't just familiar. It was legendary. The woman who had just been humiliated wasn't a problem to be corrected. She was a standard others trained to reach. The voice from the doorway instructed her to step forward. She did, boots striking the floor with quiet precision. For the first time, she turned, revealing a calm expression, eyes steady, shaved head catching the harsh light without shame. The figure at the door stepped fully into the room now, uniform immaculate, insignia unmistakable. A Navy SEAL general. Every person present snapped to attention, the sound sharp and sudden. The officer who had given the order stood frozen, realizing the room hadn't been his for several seconds now. The general's gaze moved from the shaved head to the fallen hair on the floor, then back to the officer. The silence that followed was absolute, heavy with consequence. The general let the silence stretch, not out of cruelty, but because silence reveals more than shouting ever could. His eyes moved slowly across the room, taking in every face, every rigid posture, every unspoken thought. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, controlled, and unmistakably final. He explained that discipline without understanding is just ego wearing a uniform, and that leadership begins with knowing exactly who is standing in front of you before you decide to break them down. No one moved. No one breathed too loudly. The words landed heavier than any punishment. He turned to the woman and addressed her with respect, acknowledging her years of service, the operations she had led, the lives she had brought home when others couldn't. He made it clear that her shaved head was not a mark of shame, but a reminder of how easily power can be misused when humility is absent. The woman listened without expression, but those who knew her understood the weight of that recognition. She hadn't needed defense. Her record had done that for her. The general then faced the officer who had given the order. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult him. He simply stated the consequences, outlining a review, a suspension of command authority, and mandatory leadership evaluation. The officer nodded stiffly, knowing there was no argument left to make. Around them, the room felt different now, as if everyone had aged a year in a few minutes. This wasn't just a correction. It was a lesson that would be remembered long after the hair on the floor was swept away. Before leaving, the general addressed everyone one last time. He reminded them that respect is not enforced through humiliation, but earned through example. He reminded them that the strongest warriors protect their own, especially when no one is watching. Then he saluted the woman. It was sharp, formal, and deeply symbolic. She returned it instantly, her movements precise, her shaved head held high. In that moment, any lingering doubt in the room died completely. As the general turned to leave, the tension finally released. People exhaled. Some looked at the woman with newfound respect, others with quiet shame. She stepped back into line, no longer the target of ridicule, but the center of an unspoken understanding. The humiliation had failed. It had revealed the truth instead. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, stories about respect, sacrifice, and real leadership, then make sure you subscribe to the channel Bravo Warrior Stories. Here, we honor the warriors who stand tall even when the world tries to break them down.